In the last lecture, we had a look at error messages. Certainly important. But oftentimes, you have logical errors, which are even harder to spot. You don't get an error message, but somehow it's not working. Let's say in the name changed handler, when we find the index of a person we want to update. Let's say we compare user ID with ID. And this is incorrect. The person has no user ID property. It will not throw an error though, because user ID is undefined, but you can compare undefined to something. You probably just won't find a fitting person. So if I save this code, by the way, I of course fixed the error from the last lecture. So if I save this code and we go back to the application, if we now start typing, we don't get an error, but I can type as much as I want. It won't update. I don't even see my updated value here because I broke the two-way binding because I'm not correctly updating the name of this person. Now, what can we do in such a case? We can walk through our code step by step. For that, I recommend using the Chrome Developer Tools. There you can go to the Sources tab. In the Sources tab, you will find your code structure shown under localhost. There you will find a source folder and you actually find your code here. Now, this is possible due to source maps which are generated. Basically, you could say translation files allowing the browser developer tools to go into your code as you wrote it and allow you to debug that code, even though the code which is shipped to the browser will be a different one, an optimized and bundled one. This is pretty cool because you can debug the code you wrote, even though it's not the code running in the browser. So in there, we know something's not working when I type here. And as we wrote the code, we know that the name changed handler is getting fired when we type. So let's place a breakpoint by clicking on a line number here. And let's start typing again. I typed one character and it's now pausing this. You see it's adding this I because that's the default behavior of the HTML element and we haven't executed all the other code which would overwrite it again. And now we can use the normal Chrome debugger tools here to walk through our code. And here we can step into the next function call to step into this find index function and understand what's happening there. So now inside there, we can have a look at the data we have available there, like the P object. Now we see this is for Max. This is the object that's currently looking at with find index. And we have an ID of ASFA1. We also see that this expression here is undefined though. And we compare this to an ID of ASFA1. So whilst this should match this person, which has this ID, since we access user ID, we can see it's undefined. And we can clearly see that user ID is not a valid ID because if we hover over the person again, we see there only is an ID object, no user ID object. With that information, we can now exit this process, go back to our code and fix our logical error. So using the Chrome debugger tools with source maps which are generated for you automatically is a powerful feature for detecting logical errors. You can walk through your code as you wrote it, even though that's not the code running in the browser. So that's a cool tool you should be aware of for finding and fixing errors, using the developer tools with the sources tab where you can access your original code due to source maps.